Why do so many men fall into despair, disappointment, or quiet desperation in their dealings with women? What if the very foundation of modern love is built on a lie? Not out of malice, but out of nature's cold indifference. In this video, we expose the ancient, unspoken truth, one that has been buried under centuries of romantic delusion. This is not about hatred. It is about liberation, liberation from illusion, liberation from the spell. Let us examine the true nature of the bond between man and woman. Not as society wishes it to be, as it is. The man from youth is conditioned, not only by stories and songs, but by his very blood, to seek meaning beyond the mundane. He does not merely desire a woman, he desires transcendence through her. In her form he imagines purity, in her voice he hears harmony, and in her presence he envisions the promise of fulfillment. This tendency is not accidental. It is the psychological theater, constructed by centuries of myth, religion, and poetry, all conspiring to clothe the biological in the language of the divine. What he truly desires is not the woman herself, but an image he has conjured, an illusion born of his own hunger for completion. He sees her as an answer, as salvation, as the vessel through which his restless soul will find peace. But this image is not her, it is his. It is a sculpture formed from hope, longing, and inexperience, imposed upon a being who is bound not by ideals but by nature. In the initial bloom of infatuation, the man is convinced he has found something rare, someone who truly understands, someone who mirrors the goodness he carries in himself. He mistakes the echo of his own projection for a sign of compatibility. He attributes to her virtues she has never demonstrated. He assumes depth where there is only charm, wisdom where there is only instinct, and loyalty where there is simply opportunity. This misperception is heightened by the peculiar nature of woman herself. For she, in her early interaction with the man, often plays the role he longs for her to play. Whether consciously or unconsciously, she reflects back to him the image he wishes to see. She responds with delicacy, with attentiveness, with emotional expression that suggests depth of feeling. But this behavior, while not always deceptive in intention, is not evidence of virtue. It is a strategy rooted in her own pursuit, a pursuit governed by the will to secure protection, stability, and reproductive success. Romantic idealism, therefore, is a conspiracy between the man's illusions and nature's design. He sees what he wants to see. She behaves in ways that benefit her in that moment. The tragedy lies in the asymmetry. The man believes he has found eternal meaning, while the woman is enacting a temporal strategy. The stage is set for disillusionment. Once the initial charm fades and reality asserts itself, the man begins to notice the discrepancy. He sees contradiction between what he believed and what he now experiences. The angel becomes irritable, impatient, or indifferent. The understanding gaze becomes silent judgment. The conversations, once luminous, become mechanical. In time, what was once seen as virtue is now revealed to be mere personality, and personality, once stripped of idealization, is often found wanting. And here begins the internal collapse. The man, who had poured so much of his spiritual hunger into the relationship, feels betrayed, not necessarily by her actions, but by the loss of the illusion. He mourns not the woman, but the dream. And yet, he is not entirely blameless. He constructed a temple to a god that never existed. He worshipped at the altar of his own invention. Society does not help him in this. It continues to reinforce the fantasy. Films, books, and cultural narratives all glorify the romantic ideal. The man is told that he must keep seeking, keep believing, keep opening his heart. To doubt the ideal is seen as cynicism. To question feminine virtue is labeled bitterness. And so, even after the disillusionment, many men return to the same pattern, chasing again what they lost, convinced the next woman will embody the fantasy more perfectly. But the fantasy was never about her in the first place. It was always about him, his longing, his blindness, and his surrender to a fiction more intoxicating than truth. At the core of all living beings lies a force that precedes reason, precedes morality, and precedes consciousness itself, the will to life. It is blind, insatiable, and indifferent to the lofty ideals man wraps around his existence. It is the engine that drives all movement in the natural world, the silent compulsion that animates plants toward sunlight, animals toward prey, and humans toward reproduction. And nowhere is this will more cunningly disguised than in the interactions between man and woman. In the female, the will to life expresses itself in its most strategic and disguised form. Unlike the overt aggression or conquest displayed in the male, the woman is not directed toward external expansion. Her nature is inward, selective, and concealed. Yet her allegiance is no less total to the dictates of the will. Every emotion, every instinct, and every gesture serves the end of species preservation. She does not act from a conscious desire to perpetuate the species. Rather, she is the instrument through which that blind force fulfills its design. Man, seeking companionship, imagines affection. He believes the woman's behavior arises from admiration, compatibility, or emotional resonance. What he interprets as personal connection is more often the expression of deeper, unconscious biological assessment. She is attuned, not to the man's dreams, ideals, or intellect, but to the signals of strength, security, genetic vitality, and social positioning. Her judgments are not sentimental but utilitarian, even if they are veiled in sentiment. The feminine nature is governed by selection, and selection is not driven by ethics but by outcomes. She must secure the optimal conditions for gestation, nurturing, and protection of offspring. Every choice she makes, whom to charm, whom to ignore, whom to resist, and whom to yield to, is governed not by individual fairness or logic, but by ancestral programming that maximizes survival advantage. This programming is not visible, and it is not romantic. It is practical, brutal, and effective. This is why feminine attraction so often appears irrational to the observing man. He cannot understand why the most articulate, kind, or morally upright men are ignored in favor of those who display dominance, physicality, or indifference. He fails to grasp that her mind is not calibrated to value abstract virtue. It is calibrated to read strength, confidence, and access to resources, all of which signal protection and advantage, whether through wealth, status, or biological hardwiring. The will to life in the female is not bound by consistency. What matters one day may change the next, depending on shifts in emotional state, social context, or biological rhythm. To the man, this appears as unpredictability, contradiction, or duplicity. It is none of those things when viewed from nature's perspective. It is adaptability. She is not bound to logic, she is bound to results. Even maternal affection, one of the most celebrated traits of the feminine character, is not immune to this law. It is not selfless in the way men imagine. It is a calculated investment into the continuity of her bloodline. She bonds fiercely with her child not out of abstract love, but because the child is her extension, her legacy, and, should circumstances arise that threaten her survival or that of a more viable offspring, even maternal sentiment can be subordinated. To understand the woman, one must strip away the romantic illusions and observe the workings of the will. She is not good or evil. She is not angelic nor demonic. She is a vessel, a function, an agent of life's continuation. Her virtues, as praised by poets and philosophers, are not ends in themselves, but means toward nature's end. Modesty, for instance, is not always moral restraint. It can be a form of value signaling. Emotional expression is not always evidence of depth. It can be a mechanism of influence. Tenderness, often interpreted as kindness, may simply be the strategy of the less physically dominant sex adapting to its own evolutionary reality. The man who believes he has found a soul aligned with his own may instead be encountering a will aligned with life's hidden agenda. What appears on the surface to be delicacy, softness, and emotional warmth in a woman is often mistaken by the man as evidence of superior moral nature. He sees in her gentleness a kind of nobility, a calming counterpart to his own turbulent and striving disposition. He interprets her modesty as humility, her emotional expression as sincerity, and her passivity as trust. But what he perceives as moral virtue is, in many cases, merely the tactical adaptation of the weaker to the stronger, a calculated response to power, not a manifestation of inner goodness. In the natural world, the smaller creature does not confront the predator with force. It survives through deception, camouflage, and evasion. In the same way, woman, being physically weaker and historically dependent upon male provision, evolved a mode of influence that relies not on strength, but on subtlety. Her behavior is shaped not by the pursuit of truth, but by the necessity of securing safety, attention, and resources. This does not require malice, nor does it imply conscious manipulation. It is simply the unconscious mastery of persuasion, the use of emotion, vulnerability, and softness as instruments of control. To the man entranced by her apparent innocence, this control is invisible. He is captivated not by her reasoning, but by her gestures. The tilt of her head, the tone of her voice, the carefully timed silence that draws his attention deeper. He believes she is being sincere when she confides in him, not recognizing that disclosure itself is often a tool. A way of creating emotional depth, of inviting protection by simulating need. Her sadness, when displayed, may move him more than 100 arguments. Her pleasure, when expressed, becomes a kind of reward that he chases, not realizing that he has become conditioned, like an animal trained by the promise of affection. The most dangerous aspect of this strategy is that it wears the face of virtue. Her silence appears as patience, her uncertainty as modesty, her dependency as loyalty. The man projects meaning onto these gestures, not understanding that they are responses to circumstance, behavior calibrated to draw out what she requires from her environment. She does not need to dominate overtly. She does not need to demand. Her influence operates in the undercurrents, through tears rather than commands, withdrawal rather than confrontation, silence rather than noise. And through these channels, she directs the man far more effectively than if she had attempted to do so through authority. A woman's moral language is often not the same as a man's. For the man, morality is rooted in principle, in fixed ideas of justice, loyalty, and honor. For the woman, morality is often relational. It adjusts according to the people and circumstances around her. What benefits those she cares for becomes right. What threatens her interest becomes wrong. Her sense of fairness is more emotional than abstract. She weighs outcomes by their impact on her immediate circle, not by universal standards. This is not a flaw, but a function of her deeper instinct to protect herself and those tied to her survival. In this way, even her apparent fragility becomes a weapon. It disarms the man. It appeals to his protective instinct. He feels noble in caring for her, unaware that his sense of duty has been hijacked. He believes he has chosen to help her, not realizing that she has chosen him precisely because he is susceptible to this kind of appeal. What he sees as a spontaneous act of love may, in fact, be the inevitable result of years of conditioning, cultural, biological, and psychological, that has taught him to equate her weakness with moral urgency. If he resists, she may weep. If he questions, she may retreat. If he distances himself, she may draw near, not with force, but with need. And the man, who would never be compelled by threat or command, finds himself tethered by emotion, bound to a will he cannot even see. This is the genius of her strategy, the ability to rule without appearing to rule, to control without possessing power, to influence while seeming to yield. The modern man, surrounded by illusions not only of progress but of understanding, suffers not because woman has changed, but because he has forgotten what she is. He approaches her with a nadir vitae that would be laughable were it not so tragic. Assuming equality where there is asymmetry, expecting permanence where nature permits only adaptation, and projecting depth where survival has sculpted strategy, he does not realize that his confusion is not accidental, but manufactured, a result of generations of moral sentiment, cultural fantasy, and ideological distortion designed to obscure the primal forces still governing the relationship between man and woman. He has been taught from birth to regard women as morally superior, as more sensitive, more nurturing, more peaceful. A set of assumptions that do not originate from objective observation, but from romantic idealism and social convenience. In his youth, he learns to protect her, to defer to her, to win her favor not through dominance but through compliance. In his adulthood, he is told that partnership must be built on mutual understanding, and that any assertion of masculine instinct is a threat to harmony. What he does not understand is that he has been disarmed, not by force, but by persuasion, by ridicule, by the slow erosion of instinct under the weight of ideology. The woman, meanwhile, has lost none of her ancient cunning. She adapts not only to nature but to power. And today, power resides in cultural narrative. She now holds authority not through strength, through social sentiment. Her grievances are amplified, her mistakes excused, her desires interpreted as rights. She is permitted contradiction without consequence, cruelty without accusation, and dominance under the guise of victimhood. This is not an accident. It is the perfection of the age, Old strategy, the elevation of weakness into strength through the manipulation of perception. The man, bound by principle, finds himself punished for consistency. If he asserts himself, he is labeled oppressive. If he withdraws, he is called cowardly. If he succeeds, he is suspected. He fails, he is ridiculed. At every turn, his natural instincts are pathologized. His desire to protect is mocked as paternalism. His wish to lead is painted as tyranny. Even his love, if expressed too openly, becomes a lever used against him, a means of control masked as emotional intimacy. Yet he continues to believe. He continues to chase the illusion. He sacrifices wealth, time, ambition, even dignity in pursuit of what he believes to be partnership. And when it collapses, when he finds himself discarded, humiliated, or quietly replaced, he blames himself. He does not see that he was never truly seen, only used. He does not recognize that his value was conditional from the beginning, conditional on his utility, his attention, his submission. This ignorance exacts a terrible toll. It weakens his will, erodes his confidence, and turns his natural strength inward into guilt, confusion, and bitterness. He becomes suspicious of his own impulses, ashamed of his own desires, uncertain of his own purpose. He is taught that to be a man is dangerous, that to desire, to pursue, to conquer is a relic of a darker age. What replaces these instincts is not enlightenment, but vacancy. A hollow space where ambition once lived, now filled with self-doubt and passive obedience. Meanwhile, women suffer nothing from this arrangement. She gains sympathy, status, and leverage. Her every emotional fluctuation is dignified as wisdom. Her dissatisfaction becomes a cultural event. Her whims are protected by law, her failings explained by trauma, her ambitions endorsed as virtue. And yet, despite all this, she is not happier. She is more powerful, yes, not more content. The game she plays has evolved, but the rules are the same: manipulate, attract, extract, replace. And still she searches, still she laments the absence of real men, never admitting that it is she who helped extinguish them. The modern man cannot reclaim his dignity until he ceases to participate in the lie. As long as he continues to seek truth in illusion, meaning in projection, virtue in instinctual behavior, he will remain a slave, not to the woman, but to the image of her he has allowed to be crafted in his mind. What has been laid bare is not hatred, nor bitterness, but clarity, the cold, uncomfortable clarity that comes only when one strips away the layers of myth and gazes into the machinery of nature itself. The relationship between man and woman is not governed by justice, nor fairness, nor equality, but by power, instinct, and the blind will to life. In denying this, modern man loses not only his footing but his identity. He becomes a ghost, chasing illusions painted by sentiment, believing in masks worn by necessity, and offering loyalty to forces that do not reciprocate it. This truth is not convenient. It is not marketable. It does not flatter either sex. But it offers a kind of liberation. The liberation that comes with seeing clearly, acting deliberately, and no longer being the prey of one's own delusions. If man is to reclaim his dignity, he must first abandon the fantasies he was taught to worship. He must see woman not as angel or demon, but as what she truly is, a vessel of nature, an agent of strategy, and above all, a mirror to the power he has forgotten how to wield. To awaken is not to hate, nor to retreat into bitterness. It is to cease kneeling before a fiction and to stand again as one who knows.